So Hollywood is imploding. It began with the reports of Harry Weinstein's sexual assaults, and now it looks like the bill is being passed and served to several other members of Hollywood's social elite. Also, sorry, that makes me laugh. There are also some interesting turn of events when it comes to the Boy Scouts and American ISIS. And at the end of this episode, I want to talk to you about another book that I'm reading, one of several I'm reading right now. I think you'll find it quite interesting. You're listening to The Alex Spicer Show, where we're all about faith, family, and freedom. So if you've paid any attention to the news, Harry Weinstein has apparently done a lot of bad things to a lot of women. I guess you can't even keep track of the number, but a lot of them have come out, and now he is in some really, really hot water. In fact, he's even fled to Europe for, I think it said that he was going to Europe for sex addiction treatment. Either way, after Harry Weinstein, got accused for all this, and it's true, they're not just accusations. Turns out that Ben Affleck also is in trouble for something that he did quite a while ago, and Jimmy Kimmel as well. And there'll probably be more and more people that are identified as having done these bad things. And I find it very funny, kind of ironic, because you have a place like Hollywood. They're very, very progressive, where they're all about, getting after you if you don't believe, in all of these, these women's rights, however they define women's rights. Or in these other things that they value. If you don't believe in them, then you're just an awful person. And then it turns out that they do the very things that they find disgusting. It's not a surprise at all. In fact, you look at a place like Hollywood. A place like Hollywood makes a lot of their money on exploiting women, on exploiting their bodies, exploiting women and being sexual and promiscuous. They exploit women like that all the time to obtain money. They're in the business of using women like that. So it's really not a surprise that you find people who like Harry, Ben, and Jimmy Kimmel that have done these things, because when that is how you make business, and that becomes part of the culture, and those are the sort of people you will attract. And as we can see from Harry Weinstein, this has happened for a span of a lot of years. It turns out that they will also tolerate this sort of stuff, this sort of disgusting behavior for a long time. Because, well, unless they're forced and cornered into owning up their actions, they will continue to ignore these sort of things and continue to contradict their supposed values. And when it comes down to it, Hollywood doesn't really have any true moral values. They don't have true principles. They're just a bunch of social justice warriors, and they try to act as though they are the leaders of moral rightness, when really they are quite sleazy, quite awful themselves. Now, Boy Scouts. I used to be a Boy Scout, so I find this very interesting. I did Cub Scouts when I was younger, and then when I got older, I did Boy Scouts, and I got my Eagle Scout. And since my time in Boy Scouts has continued to become more progressive, and in recent years they've made it so that you can be openly gay as a leader or as a scout yourself, or also they allow people who identify as boy to join. And now it turns out that they are starting to encroach even more so in a very more direct way on Girl Scouts of America's territory. So Boy Scouts, obviously, boys go there. Girl Scouts, girls go there. Well, now Boy Scouts is opening it up so that girls can join Cub Scouts and do activities there, and they're trying to start programs where they will allow women also to do Boy Scouts and obtain an Eagle Scout, the Eagle Scout Award. And Girl Scouts of America is furious. Now, this is really funny. As one article said, they said, this is happening because a lot of families see Boy Scouts as kind of outdated, and their kids would rather do sports. And that's not true. Yes, it's true that less people are doing Boy Scouts, and maybe they do want to do sports more. But the actual reason why Boy Scouts is failing, the actual reason why Boy Scouts has become so desperate, they're going down in flames, and they're so desperate to obtain more people in the programs. It is because of the fact that they have ostracized the very foundation, the very market, the very people who have been their foundation, been their support. For the last 100 years, Boy Scouts has stood for very conservative moral values. And those are the sort of people that you have going to Boy Scouts of America. The Mormon Church being one major example. They were a huge supporter, donating millions, I believe it was hundreds of millions of dollars every year. And you have millions of scouts from the Mormon Church, the LDS Church, as part of the scout program. And then you start to do things that are completely against the conservative moral values like the Mormon Church has. Well, then they start to withdraw. I mean, in general, the general population, people will stop supporting that because that's not what they went to Boy Scouts for. And you even have the Mormon Church, they themselves have withdrawn from Boy Scouts. They no longer feel that they are really compatible anymore. And that's true. Boy Scouts have done horrible things to themselves. I mean, completely asinine, totally ridiculous and stupid, really, that you would attack the very base that keeps you alive. And now they're kind of into this little war with Girl Scouts, where they're stealing from the Girl Scouts. And all I can do is just kind of sit back and laugh, because I'm quite disappointed in the Boy Scouts and the direction they have turned. It doesn't mean much to me anymore that I am a Boy Scout, that I'm an Eagle Scout, that I got my Eagle Scout award because of what Boy Scouts has become. And you have to recognize that you can't go against what your company originally stands for, its image and everything, without dire consequences. A really good example of this, I believe it was Xerox. They make copier machines. But when MP3 players were like brand new, they actually came out with MP3 players, and they were like, okay, MP3 players they're pretty new, but they're super exciting. Everyone's gonna love it. We're gonna make tons of money because everyone's gonna want our MP3 players. Well, it turns out they failed miserably because no one wanted their MP3 players. Why? Because no one identified Xerox as a company that would provide music devices. That makes no sense. Those who use Xerox, like, you're not an MP3 company, you're a copier and fax machine company. And that was a failed idea. If you want to get more ideas or more examples of this, just read Simon Sinek's Start With Why. A lot of good examples in there. But really, when it comes down to it, when you are an organization for more than 100 years have stood for conservative moral values, and now you start acting progressive, you are going to lose that fan base. You're going to lose that. You're going to lose that support. Now, ISIS. It turns out ISIS, and I'm actually surprised with this. I read an article in the Hill by Buck Sexton saying that ISIS has been not completely destroyed, but they are being destroyed horribly. And that hundreds regularly are surrendering from ISIS because they've lost so much territory. They're losing all these battles. There's been a lot of conflict going on. Apparently, it sounds like we've been a lot more aggressive there, and ISIS is failing. They may not even exist in 2018, or at least not very long. Now, that being said, we have to recognize that there are a ton of other competing terrorist organizations out there that don't like ISIS merely because of the fact that ISIS is their competitor. You have Al-Qaeda, you have Taliban, you have a lot of other organizations that will continue to promote and supply us with plenty of terrorism throughout the world. But ISIS will soon be out of the picture, it looks like. It's very interesting, though, because you have someone like President Trump, who, by the way, I did not vote for and I'm not really a big fan of, but he obviously does something very different with the military. With Obama was very much apologetic for us being Americans, for the values and the things that we had, and also he was very progressive. He introduced, or at least led, the military in such a way that they were extremely politically correct in what they did, where they would value the lives and the property of our enemies more than our own soldiers, which ended up in a lot of lives lost, a lot of bodies hurt, a lot of casualties took place. But I guess I don't know officially, but it seems as though that these politically correct rules of engagement are being done away with. Either way, ISIS is being smashed, and you have to recognize that we're not the only Western country that is taking out and fighting ISIS. But you do notice that when America starts to withdraw from this fight, so do our allies. That really America has to lead. We have to lead. If we don't lead, then no one else really will. We have to lead the fight. So when we do lead in these things, well, then our allies will also step up and stop being progressive and dumb like we were and are at times. And they will also engage the enemy much more, and we can actually eliminate evil. You have to understand that when it comes to war, when it comes to these sort of situations, when things become more extreme, you also have to make your measures more extreme. You don't lose morality, but you do have to change your measures. You cannot do what you did in peace and hope that it works out in times of war. You really have to be able to have new measures. That way, another way to put it, you have to be willing to up your measures to meet the challenge of the circumstance. Now, the book I want to talk to you about that I've been reading recently, I'm almost done, is called Extreme Ownership: How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. I actually forgot to write the name of the authors right here. It is a really good book. I mean, it's fantastic. There are two major principles I've talked about before and also in my book, responsibility and accountability, how those two principles are really ignored in America, and it's causing a lot of problems. Well, extreme ownership, really, it's just a way to encompass both of those principles together. Extreme ownership, really all that means is that you own up to everything in your life. Anything that goes on in your life, any and all things, you own it. It is yours. Your results, everything. It doesn't matter if you are a team leader and someone else makes all these dumb decisions that do a lot of dumb things. If you are the leader, you own it. It is yours. And it is extremely freeing. When I have worked with people and trying to help them improve their lives and apply proper principles to become better, well, I've always had to help them own these things in their life. They have to own their life and everything in it. When you do that, then you are responsible, you are accountable, you will do the things that will completely transform the way you act, the way you believe, the way you behave. If you really want to, understand how you can be better in your own life or even in your business, read this book. It's awesome. Extreme Ownership: How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. It is great. We need more people who will own their lives rather than being so passive with everything going on in their life and trying to pass the buck onto someone else. That really is a major issue here. That's why we have so many socialistic programs that have arisen in the last 20 years, and also ideas that are fought over in the political battlefield all the time, because people want more socialism the less they're willing to own up to anything in their life. The more you want to focus on coming up with excuses on why you suck, the more you want to be a socialist, the more you want to steal from other people. And actually, this kind of came up in a little bit of an argument I had with someone over the weekend, how they were talking about, white privilege. And I just said, well, white privilege is just, when it comes down to it, it's really just an excuse. It's just an excuse to focus on circumstances rather than on your choices and doing better. Sure, there are advantages and disadvantages to all people and in all circumstances. They're not the same. They're not equal. But you really have to own it, because if you don't, you're just going to make a lot of crappier decisions that aren't going to make your life better, but especially when you go through politics and government to then implement your dumb ideas, they make everyone's lives worse. So thank you so much for listening to the Alex Spicer Show. Please click that like button. It is crucial. The more people who like this and listen to this, and if you share this, the more people can hear this and we can reach a greater audience. I really appreciate your time. Remember, we stand for faith, family, and freedom. Live free. Until next time.